Hello. Welcome to the next episode of Viewer Obsession Advised. I'm Jonah, and today with me is Jason, my cousin, and also a fellow film enthusiast. We are going to be mixing up our sort of format from last time. I did something solo. This time we're going to have you involved with this discussion of one of my favorite films because I need a break from being alone. Man, it's a lonely work doing YouTube stuff.
Yeah, I like having the conversation partner. I feel like it's easier sometimes to just flow.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So today we're going to be talking about
Annihilation.
When did you see this movie?
Well, oh man, the first time. Okay, so the first time I saw it it was probably 2 years ago. And then I just remember being very creeped out. In the end, I kind of saw coming. I was like, oh, I know how, like, as it built towards the end, I was like, I know how this thing's going to end. And I'm not. And then I think the reason I was creeped out is because the sound they did with it. Like, they didn't really have music that I remember. It was just that one sound that, it sounded like a weird ambient noise underneath. Yeah, so that, I don't know why. I think that really helped the creepiness of the film. When did you first see it?
Dude, okay, so I was incredibly fortunate. I was on YouTube and I was listening to this guy talk about films that are coming out, some critic. And he's like, look, there's a movie that's coming out for only 2 weeks. You got to go see it if you like sci-fi. Yeah, it was awesome. I was super glad I was able to see it in theaters. But the problem was that the company that made it, I believe it was Paramount, they saw the end product and they were like, we don't know how to market this. And so they dumped it onto Netflix like 2 weeks after it came out. Paramount decided that we were too dumb over here in America that's fair. to appreciate this kind of, it's a slower film.
Yeah.
And I understand why some people would probably, you have Marvel, which is just insanity, and it's like a lot that's thrown at you compared to this movie. This is not that kind of movie at all.
Yeah, you have to think about it, and it's hard to even think about because there's so much packed into it. Yeah. It's like when I first watched it, I was definitely too dumb for it because I was like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. But when I watched it yesterday, I was just like, this thing after thing they just pack the layers on, and then on top of it all, the writing and the dialogue in it is very, very. You really have to pay attention to that too, because every once in a while they'll drop these really important like hints and sayings. Yeah, I think noticing now that I know a little bit more about symbolism, I think I could pick up on it a little more, because just the thing with the rainbow colors, it's like, which is done. I thought it was like almost done perfectly, because it's always this weird shadowy thing in the background. Like, it's never like a bright rainbow in your face or anything. It's just kind of like, you almost don't notice it unless you're looking for it.
Yeah, and it's just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So good to look at.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's that's another thing I wanted to like bring up, I guess. It's a horror film that you mentioned, but it's like so beautiful at the same time, and it's like enticing and inviting and then absolutely terrifying.
Yes.
It's really strange.
It's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So do you want to I don't know. I mean, I guess there's spoilers going to be in this. Do you want to give a rundown of the film and give your thoughts
absolutely.
on it?
Or? Let's give a quick overview of what's happening in the film. Obviously, it's been out for a few years, so most people who have already seen it have already seen it, and so they already kind of know what's going on. But it's been a while, so let's give them a reminder. For those of you who have not seen it, totally just watch the movie first before you get into the rest of this, because I think that you'll really benefit from going in blind, because there's a lot of stuff, a lot of twists and things that I think are just better just to experience. But that being said, let's give him an overview of the movie. We open up with sort of a question. So we have our leading lady, played by Natalie Portman, who is a biologist, and her husband has been missing for 6 months. He's been MIA. And he's a soldier, and she thinks that something could have happened. She thinks he might be dead. They're not sure. But then out of the blue, her husband comes back from nowhere. She doesn't know where he came from, and he comes home and he seems off, and he doesn't remember things, and he has a lot of questions about where he came from because he doesn't know. And in the middle of her trying to get some of the answers out of him, he starts to bleed, and things go worse from there. these folks come by and pick them up, and they're like kind of CIA looking, sort of special ops kind of folks. They pick them up, and they're taken to a place called the Southern Reach, which is where an invading force is sort of growing and expanding, like it's like a force field, and it's growing and expanding, and as it grows and expands, the Southern Reach is kind of moving with it, and it's, you know, keeping an eye and tracking this invading force to make sure that, you know, nothing is getting into inhabited zones. They're trying to solve the mystery of what it is and try to figure out how to defeat it, so that way it doesn't kill a bunch of people, essentially. Slowly kill a bunch of people. And so then we're thrown into that. So obviously...
Because I think they say nothing comes out of it, right?
Nothing comes out.
Except for
They send people in.
Yeah.
Nothing comes back out. And so they assume that whatever's in there is very dangerous. Yeah. And her husband is the only one who's ever come back out. And so that's where we kind of start the story. And so the rest of the story is basically her journey, Natalie Portman's journey through the Shimmer, which is that force field.
So what was your like interpretation of the movie? What did you think? It was like, what is it about? What did you, I don't know, pick up from it?
Yeah, totally. So I've been working on I don't know what you'd call it, a theory?
Okay.
Maybe not a theory. I've been working on, it'll be called let's call it a diagram. If you're on YouTube, you'll see it on screen now. I want to call it the Annihilation Onion. Okay. Or maybe, this is probably not very good. The Annihilation Planet.
Okay.
Well, it depends on how this graphic is, and you'll understand here in a second. But so Annihilation, I think that you can look at it critically from some different levels, right? Some different points. And so we'll start with like the centerpiece, right? The kind of the core of this movie. And you'll understand what I mean by planet later, because it's like what I'm doing is I'm like pulling back focus almost and seeing like a bigger picture. Okay, but so let's start with the core. So we have with this movie the mysterious and existential threat of an invading species to our environment. So that's like the first kind of theme you can pick apart. So I don't usually like it when people are like, you know, well, in the book it's like this, or, you know, in the movie it's like this. But I think that there are going to be a couple of references that I want to make because I think it's kind of interesting. When Jeff Vandermeer, who's the author of the novel, when he was writing this book, he said he got the idea because he's an environmentalist, and he had the idea for this book when he was in a dentist chair, and he was like gassed up, and he was like kind of high, you know, and he was thinking about, there was an oil spill that had happened in Florida, and he had been helping with the cleanup or something like that. He was kind of involved with that. And he remembers seeing that. And so he had this dream about, it was essentially the book where it's like this woman is, you know, going into this weird environment where things have been changed and altered. And it's sort of like the oil spill, but instead of an oil spill, it's like a living being that is doing all this stuff. But yeah, so that would be the second piece of that sort of puzzle, of that theme, where it's like you have nature, and it's sort of an exploration of nature. The whole movie is, where it's like nature. You have these weird things that happen in nature that are scary and kind of ugly. So you have like cancer is something that's brought up in the movie a lot, where it's like you have cancer and you have cells that are flawed and they're dying. And if they amass enough of them, then they kill you essentially, right? Yeah. And so in the movie, you have all of these moments of these duplications. So you have probably the easiest one to point to is you have the moment with the two deer-like creatures. I don't know what they're. Oh, yeah. They're not necessarily deer, but you know they have like branches for antlers. They're pretty cool.
It's so pretty is the thing. Like we mentioned, It's I don't know.
And then they split, and then one of them is diseased.
Oh, okay, I don't even.
And the other one is whole, and it's like one of them is beautiful, and then one of them is this ugly thing that is destined to die sooner than the other one. And if you notice, all of the animals that attack them are like the evil versions. Like all the diseased things are the ones that are coming to kill them. So the alligator and the bear, which is horrifying. That's like one of my favorite like horror movie things is that bear, because it is freaking scary. Yeah.
You keep going.
So yeah,
I'm like,
we
need to talk about that bear at some point.
We can stop. We can stop and talk about the bear. But yeah, so that would be sort of like the first piece of my planet. If you talk about like the core of the Annihilation planet, that's sort of like the core of what all this movie is about. Okay, so the big thing, and it's the sort of the overarching theme of the film itself, is self-destruction. So self-destruction as being something that human beings engage in, as that nature engages in. Again, the cancer metaphor. When you have all four of our characters, all the ladies, when they're going in to the shimmer, each one are going in with a different kind of self-destruction. So you have one who cuts herself. That's the... See, I don't remember their jobs. That's really terrible. So you have the psychologist who has cancer, and she is going in as a suicide mission.
I'm on it.
You have the EMS girl who is an addict.
I know the biologist is one, which is Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman's the biologist.
Character.
Ventress is the psychologist.
Okay, psychologist. Let me see. Scrolling down. Cass Shepard is an anthropologist.
Okay.
Anthropologist, whatever.
She's the one who lost her daughter and seems to have some sort of depression or suicidal kind of ideology or something like that.
The one that is that was the addict, or
she's an EMS kind of something.
Team. She's a paramedic. Okay, yeah, and then the Josie Radic or Tessa Thompson is a physicist.
Okay.
Which is weird. I thought she was the biologist, but I guess not.
No,
because she's the one that points out about when I think she points out something about the cells at one point, so I thought, yeah.
Well, but she does so kind of in a point where it's I think you could argue that she's still kind of following her little physicist arc there.
Probably,
but
that was probably my one, like, but maybe not the only one. The main I think qualm I had about the movie is like I felt like I wanted more time for character development.
Okay.
Because I thought they did a very great job with that, but that's I don't know. But like you said, they all had different jobs. And
they're not characters; they're archetypes.
Okay. So you can't really develop them, I guess.
Well, and not really in a traditional sense of an archetype. So when you, again, I'm going to make a little book reference. So when you read the book, each of the characters are not named. None of them are named. You don't know who anyone is. You just know them by the job title. So you have a psychologist, the biologist, who is the woman you're following.
That's interesting.
And then you have, I think, a physicist and a linguist. Is the four. And each one has a function in the story, but none of them have an actual name. And each one kind of represents a sort of an attitude towards what they're experiencing and a reaction towards what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
So in a similar sense, the movie does the same thing. The movie does more characterization for each of these characters than the book did.
Oh, okay.
Where it gives you enough.
Yeah.
But the story isn't really about them. It's sort of like a Greek myth, where it's like you read about it, and it's not really about the little characters. It's about the big one who is going on the quest. And so in that regard, like, the story isn't really about the four other women. It's about Natalie Portman's biologist character.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say that's a very purposeful choice. It was also one of the things that this director does pretty well is sort of builds like an objective case, which is very sci-fi. And he's a writer, so he does a lot of that through dialogue. But he's building an objective case about humanity or the human condition, and he's doing so and trying to kind of have you distanced from it, but at the same time still engaged with it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's kind of an intentional choice on his part.
Yeah. So you mentioned human conditions. That probably can tie back into you had just mentioned self-destruction, and they all.
Yes.
Before I got distracted with what their jobs were.
You're good. Yeah, what the jobs were. No, that's good. I couldn't remember what Josie Radic was. But that's the overarching theme of the film, is self-destruction. And it's not just self-destruction, but it's specifically an exploration into self-destruction as being a creative force. So you have the symbol of the Ouroboros, which is you see it throughout the film. It's that snake that's eating itself. It's tattooed, and that tattoo moves from person to person. I don't know if you picked up on that.
I didn't even notice that.
So everything.
It was a tattoo?
Everything kind of flows together in the shimmer, right? So like things kind of mix. So some people pick up other people's accents. Some people have tattoos, and then that tattoo will disappear, and then it'll reappear on somebody else. It's like everybody's kind of mixing together.
Yeah.
In this big weird kind of genetic refractal sort of thing, these refractions. So there's this tattoo, and it's actually the one that the biologist ends up with in the end. It's this tattoo that appears, and it's like we don't really know who it came from. It may be the guy who has the freaky stuff in his, where there's like intestines are slithering. We think that's like the first time you kind of see it, where it's like that guy's probably the one who had it first. Not sure. Anyways, but that symbol is basically an ancient symbol, meaning basically that self-destruction is creation, because it's constantly eating itself, but in constantly eating itself, it's creating something new.
Is that the one that's just a circle?
It's like a figure eight. Well, it could be a circle too.
Okay, yeah. I may have seen it as a circle before.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably more commonly as a circle.
Okay.
But I think the figure eight works with the story because it's like an infinite
I
cycle.
kind of almost like that better.
Yeah.
But.
So that's like, if you were to take a step back and look at like what the film's about, that's what the film's about. So you can look at this movie from that aspect as well. So you can look at it as being about the environment, which it is. You can also look at it being a themed film. There's sort of a practice in filmmaking where it's like, you have a strong theme built into the film from the get-go.
Yeah.
That's like the whole thing that you're trying to do, is you're trying to explore a specific theme. So that's one method. And I think for him, and it's just from interviews and stuff, it seemed very intentional that was his theme for the film, where he kind of outright said that self-destruction is a form of creation.
Yeah, there was one part where the psychologist, you probably know that, but there was one line in the film, she says, there's a difference between suicide and self-destruction or something like that. Yeah. And then she goes on her thing, that we all self-destruct in some way.
Yeah.
I had a question, though. I'm trying to remember it now.
Okay.
Yeah, so, even that, I think it begins with her, she almost mentioned self-destruction, being a biologist and talking about our cells.
So, yes.
That there's no way, there's no reason. Our cells should regenerate, but they just die. Yeah. And so, they almost self-destruct or something in a way.
Which is kind of an interesting little bit, because he's like, just to, kind of tie in a little religious symbolism there, which I don't think this film's a religious film whatsoever, but it's kind of interesting where he's like, where Cain is like maybe God made a mistake, and that's why. I remember that line, he says he does. He says God does not make a mistake. Yeah, but then she says, like, "Well, there is a mistake." Yeah. Which, if you look at Genesis, there's this story, and we're not going to go on this tangent for too long. We'll get back. to the movie.
No, let's do it.
We'll get back to the movie.
Yeah.
But there is a moment in Genesis with, I think it's either right before or right after the Tower of Babel. And God is really pissed off at humanity. And he's like, we can't abide with humanity for as long as they live. Because they were living like 800-900 years, on average, like 700 to 900 years. And he's like, we can't deal with humanity this long. We're going to cut down their lifespan to like 80 to 90 years. And so that's what he does. And he's just like, and bam, snaps his fingers. And the people suddenly don't live like as long as Abraham. Abraham was even really old too, wasn't he? Remember how old he was when he died?
He was well over 100.
Definitely well over 100.
Yeah, I think he said like, I can't remember what it was. I think it was maybe 120 years or something. And then slowly after that, it was, because Noah, that was right before the flood. And then Noah, I think, goes through the flood, and Noah still lives, because he's 600 by the time he gets on the ark.
He's an old guy.
But then slowly after that, you watch the age span, and it's like
goes
starts
down.
dropping,
Yep.
Dramatically. Yeah.
So if you were to kind of tie that back into this movie, it's like, well, maybe there's an intentional flaw in the code, That's kind of an interesting thought. The next piece you can look at is the sort of metaphor of a broken and then reconstructed marriage. So if you wanted to jump back and you wanted to look kind of from another level, another height, you can look at this whole story as being a metaphor for the biologist sort of coming back into her marriage and reconstructing it. Because at the beginning, they're on the rocks, she's been having an affair, he's distant, and then by the end, they're together again, but they're not the same people. And so it's like, again, with that whole self-destruction is recreation theme, you see that as like, you see that sort of arc complete, where it's like, now these are two people who are unified again, but they're not the same people as when they started the journey. Yeah.
Can you explain that to me a little bit? Because the end, I didn't get to rewatch it this past time.
Okay.
And I was like, it seemed to me like it was left up in this mystery world the first time I watched it, where you're kind of like, is she... and I don't even know if it's an alien or not. Like, it doesn't really ever... I mean, you assume it is because it comes from outer space. Like, something hits the lighthouse.
Maybe we should start with that.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe we should start with that. Okay, so the big theory with this invasion... This is an invasion story. Again, we're going to go back down to a first little core of the planet. This is an invasion story, but instead of an intelligent species invading, sort of like Predator, where it's like they're coming to hunt, or Alien, where they're coming to feed... The invading force is just a foreign body, and it just adapts and grows, and it sort of takes on this new life. And when it does that, it's not doing so in any sort of method. Like, it's not trying to conquer, it's just growing and learning and becoming its own thing.
Yeah.
Again, and back to the cancer metaphor, it's this thing that is just, it's bad for you, but it's at the same time, it's growing in you. And so it's kind of this weird paradox. And so when you look at this invading force as being sort of like its own thing, and all it is trying to do is recreate what it's seeing, when we get to the end of the movie, our two people who are there are not the same people as we begin. And so one of them has been obviously recreated. So the lighthouse scene is like, you're showing that sort of recreation of a person. So this invading species, whatever this is in the Shimmer, it has recreated Kane. And we see the doppelganger effect, where it's like there's two of them. And so one of them leaves, and the one of them that is left is not the original Kane, because that man committed suicide. But when we get to the ends, in Natalie Portman's character, I forget her actual character's name. We'll call her the biologist. Don't want to call her Natalie Portman anymore. Whenever the biologist returns from her journey, you see the flicker in the eyes just like Kane's eyes. Now, one of two things happened here. One, her cells that we see kind of duplicating and moving have either taken her over, and now she is joined the Shimmer, or this is the duplicate. But I think that her cells have been taken over. When she is returned as herself, but this thing that is inside her has grown to such an extent where it has taken her over.
Yeah, you might be right on that, because she seems to have memory. At least a little bit of memory.
She has,
happened, and he didn't
seem
to have that.
To them. Yeah, she totally has memory.
Yeah.
Which is another thing, again, the book, but the second book, you start off and she totally remembers stuff, and she's the only one who's ever come back and remembered stuff.
Yeah.
Her husband was the only one who came back, but he didn't remember anything.
Yeah, he didn't really even seem to know her till she said her name or something. There was this weird part,
Yeah. I don't even know if he came back in the book. I don't remember. I have to reread that and make sure.
So is the first book the whole movie?
No.
Okay, all right. Because
we'll get to that.
Okay, yeah.
Completely different.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that, because that's like my next little level, I think.
Yeah. All right.
Because I think it's kind of interesting too. But yeah, I think that's what's happened in the end, is where she's been, because we've seen the cells growing inside of her.
Yeah, she checks out her own cells at one part in the movie. It's rainbow colored.
And it's rainbow.
Doing its thing.
She's becoming a rainbow.
Yeah. I make it sound cheesy. It's actually really cool looking. It doesn't look like a rainbow. It kind of looks like an oil spill. Like
an oil spill.
Yeah, weird kind
shining
of
a light through
color.
a crystal.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So going back to the beginning though.
Okay.
Like, so when the thing falls, it doesn't show what it is. It looks like a meteor or whatever, and it falls out of the sky, and then it hits a lighthouse. And so that's what they're all trying to get to this lighthouse, to figure that out. Is there, because you're not too far in the book either, is there a reason he chose a lighthouse that you know of, or no?
He's from Florida, and there was a lighthouse he really liked.
Okay, all right.
And it goes along with the oil spill theme.
Okay, all right.
So, where it kind of takes place there. I don't think that there's any other reason than that. I think when
it's like you could draw so much symbolism
that's
if
fair.
you wanted.
Well, and what was really cool is like the book is just like a fever dream, and it reads that way too. But like when he was dreaming up this book, and all the stuff that happens in it, he was like in this twilight thing, and so he just saw a lighthouse, and he saw this stuff happen around the lighthouse, and he kind of wrote it down and then fleshed it out and then gave it to his wife, and his wife said, "That was pretty good.
Yeah,
you should get it published."
There might be a line in the movie where they say something like that, to it being like a dream world or something.
Yeah,
it kind of is. It's totally It's just,
they do.
It's random and chaotic, and they don't. Yeah.
Which is where I think it's fun to look at it from a psychological perspective, as being like a a sort of a reunification of marriage story.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of that psychology with it, where it's like you could almost speculate like this story is being told. Again, if you just want to play around with it, I'm not saying this is what the director's intent was, because I don't think it was. But if you wanted to look at it this way, it's almost like you're looking through the biologist's mind, and she is like trying to piece together sort of like the deterioration of her marriage. And it's like all this stuff could be like happening in her subconscious level, where she's kind of figuring this out. And that's why you have all these characters who don't act like characters. They act like dream characters, where they're not real, but they are kind of real, and they're kind of trying to teach her something.
In her subconscious level.
In her subconscious.
I almost asked that question earlier. Is the invading force kind of like the shadow?
I think you could... Again, this isn't... I don't think
I'm
this is
unfamiliar
at all...
with Jung, so I don't know.
No, I think that this is completely just me just kind of spitting smoke, because I don't think it's at all his intention. But I think it'd be fun to look at it from that perspective, where it's like, this is a symbolic film about... if this was a Terry Gilliam film, that's totally what this would be. But I think this is kind of a step back from
That's really interesting, because even the oil spill would kind of be like a dark mirror or something in a way, right? Yeah. It's really... Yeah, that's... I mean, I don't think it's wrong to look at it that way, though, because I understand what you're saying. I feel like if he was intentional to write it that way, it would have lost its... it would have fell flat. Yeah. I think when people just write, if they just write from their intuition or imagination or... shadow. No, I'm just kidding. Then I think it comes out and applies. I think that's why Christian films don't ever do as well, because they're always intending to be like, they almost feel like propaganda or something.
You and I need to sit down and watch a Christian film together and then talk about it, because they're all miserable.
Yeah,
I don't say all. There's like two good ones.
Except for Time Bandits.
Except for Time Bandits. I don't know about that. We'll have to talk through that one. That might be a stretch. All right, let me take you another level up.
Yeah.
We're almost there. We're almost through our levels.
Okay.
This is the last big one, and this is the one that I think is, for me, one of the coolest aspects of this film. So if you want to take another look at it, big picture, and you look past the story, and you get up above the clouds and into the atmosphere. All
right, let's do it.
This movie is an interesting meta conversation that is being told by a director about the nature of creating art. And I say that because when you read the book, it is completely different than the movie. And the reason why is because when the director sat down, his name is Alex Garland. He's awesome. I love his work. When he sat down and read this book, he said, I want to make a movie of it. But he only read it through once, and he just had a feeling about the book, and he kind of just took little bits of it that he remembered, like in his memory, and he said, okay, without going back and trying to recreate the book, I'm just gonna write something new out of it. And so he wrote this script, which I think is a fantastic script. I think it's a good script, and in doing so, it almost matches the theme of the book, where it's like, in order to create something new, you have to destroy something else. It's like that self-destruction. So he is destroying the novel, and he's recreating something else into this really new thing. Because the book and the movie, if you compare them together, it's almost like not apples and oranges, because they're close in some regards, but like the whole atmosphere is the same, but then everything else is like, the details are all different.
Yeah. That's really cool.
And I think that's for me, I think that's really interesting, because you can take it all those levels, where it's like, you can look at it, okay, it's an invasion story, or this is a theme story, it's about self-destruction, or you can look at it as being like, maybe this is about their marriage, and you can look at it and kind of dissect it all about like them coming back together and being new people, or you can look at it as being like this conversation that this director is having almost with himself about, the nature of creating art, and how creating art requires that sort of level of chaos, which then destroys something, but in doing that destruction, you are creating something new out of it.
Yeah. So it's kind of, in a way, it's this, like you said, death and rebirth film, sort of.
Totally.
I'm wondering why it's so horrifying then, because you think that'd be a good thing, because even in Christianity and Buddhism, things like that, that's kind of a thing, as you I think it's Buddhism, right? Yeah, to die to yourself in these little ways, to kind of self-destruct, so you can restore and renew into a more healthier lifestyle, a healthier life, everything
Sure.
like that. And this one, this film just kind of feels like scary. Like it's
When we'll take it to the Bible here, because I know that better than Buddhism. I don't know very much about Buddhism. So along with your point, when you become a Christian, you were told that you were going to die to yourself.
Mhm.
You have to lay yourself down and die. Death is a horribly scary thing.
yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are. It's like you have sort of that innate fear of death. Now, if that is sort of a spiritual representation, I think that there is sort of this spiritual fear of giving up sort of a sin nature, or like what's that thing that is essentially you. You're giving up yourself and you're dying to yourself so that way you can become something else.
Yeah.
You're becoming more like Christ. And in doing so, you're going to exchange these old habits, these old patterns, these old revolutions, and take on this new pattern and this new revolution.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe one of the reasons it seems horrifying is because within the shimmer, you don't know what the pattern is that you want to take on. In a sense,
that's
it
fair.
seems like I'm just wondering why it feels so horrifying, because it's like because there's almost like when you go into the shimmer, there's not really a promise of you're going to come out better on the other side.
And most
It's
people
like-
don't.
Yeah. It's like
We've
you
only had
don't.
one.
Yeah. You drown in there and you don't make it. sort
Right.
of, yeah.
Well, which is also the danger of looking at it as specifically a sort of spiritual or psychological metaphor, because it doesn't function that way.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, it does a little bit. You can kind of look at it that way. But one of the things that you need to add into that is like it's about first the environment, second the self-destruction. And so if you look at it as those themes, the shimmer is sort of like it's like this canvas, right? And so you have this blank canvas, and then you're throwing paint in there and you're mixing the paint together, and then you're forming new things out of the paint. And these new images are taking over the old images and they bleed all together like this. I'm thinking about surrealism here.
Yeah.
And it's like it's sort of like this place for the genetic code to just do. And I think that's where the horror comes from, because it breaks down everything that we know to be reality. And this is one thing that I don't understand, and this was not in the book at all, which is why I think it's kind of interesting. But like there is a moment when the biologist and our crew who are left, I think Shepard's the only one who's died at this point, but they arrive at the house and they have the treeple. The tree people?
Yeah.
The treeple.
Yeah.
And they're around, and they walk into this house, and the house is her house. It's the biologist's house. It's just been recreated in there. That's the only thing that like it goes with the theme. It totally goes with the theme where it's like it's kind of ugly and it's all kind of broken down and dilapidated, and like overgrown. So it goes with the theme of the movie. But I'm like, how does the house appear there? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like, because that has nothing to do with genes or genetics or anything like that. But it's really cool because that's where the bear attacks. And then you see that in the beginning of the movie, Kane has the bear tattoo.
Oh, see, I didn't know that. Man, I gotta watch this movie
freaking
6
horrifying.
times.
Yeah, you just watch the tattoos move around. It's pretty freaky.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
The whole thing moves around. Yeah, it's just...
The details are just awesome. I love the details in this movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's so packed full. When I said that, it's just hard. I mean, it's not like it's not hard to watch. You can just sit back and watch it and enjoy it. But if you start thinking about it, you're just like, wait, what is going on here? It's It's crazy. So, do you have any favorite parts though? What was you?
Oh man, I love the moment when Josie Raddick becomes a treeple. It's like so. It's like the weirdest relief that you have in the movie, where it's like you have all this horrible stuff that happens and this horrifying thing with the bear, like the scene before, and then you watch, Josie Raddick just go, "I'm done," and then she just gives up. But like you kind of are happy about that,
Yeah,
which is horrible.
Beautiful about it.
There's something beautiful about that, and you're like, I should be really sad that this character's dying, but at the same time you're like, well, this is probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's the aspect of that though, is like that it's that it is art in a way, and you have to engage in chaos and art, and she just throws herself in at that.
Yeah,
she's just like this. I'm just going all in, and you kind of have to do that. I think sometimes to, I don't know that you always have to do that. Like it's good to have an anchor or something to hold on to, I guess.
Think so too.
But there's there's something really beautiful about that when she does it. But then, I don't know. Yeah, it's man. There's just there's
a lot of good
in
stuff.
there. Yeah, that is a good part though. I love that. Because does she become one of the tree people? Because she just kind of disappears.
We don't see it.
You kind of assume
We just
that,
assume
but
she has, yeah. We don't see it, which I think is great. That's one of the things this movie does that I really enjoy is they just leave a lot of things ambiguous. I love ambiguity in movies.
Yeah.
I hate it when it's like they explain stuff that, like, well, especially if they show it to you and then explain it. I'm like, I don't need the explanation. I just saw this. Like, I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
Just show me the thing. We'll just move on from there.
Yeah.
Totally. What's your favorite part of the movie? Do you have one?
One of the parts I really liked, honestly, I think my favorite character was, I think it was Shepard. It was the girl that dies first.
Yeah, that's Shepard.
Okay, yeah. I don't know why I liked her, but then I liked the part where they're in the, I remember this time watching, I really liked the part where they're in their canoe.
Yeah.
And she's kind of giving, and like you said in the book, they don't really have that character development, but she's kind of giving a background of each character. And then she says, this one girl, she says she's sober, which means she's still an addict.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Like, I don't know, maybe you can explain that. That one didn't click for me, but the other line she said was the girl that cut herself. She said, this girl wear a long sleeve all the times to hide the scars.
Yeah.
And then I think, I looked it up, it's Lena, I think, is Natalie Portman's character.
Okay,
so we can say
Lena.
that,
Yeah, Lena.
Yeah, so she said, Lena says...
Finally.
Yeah. She says, is she suicidal? And she said, no, I don't think she's suicidal. She just, quite the opposite. She wants to feel alive. And I thought that was really, I don't know, I just thought that was a really good line.
Super good.
Yeah.
Jason, man, thanks for coming on to this episode of Viewer Obsession Advice. This is episode 2. We'll have episode 3 coming down the pipeline probably in the next couple weeks to a month. We'll see how much time I have. But we'll see about that. Dude, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Wonderful. Good night. And remember, there are almost 7 billion people in the world, and you'll never have the chance to meet them all.